What is happening, everyone? Wait, let me restart that. There's a stream delay usually. All right, probably live now. What's going on, everyone? Welcome to American Advocates and happy Friday. I got the hairline reveal for the haters. Actually, let me put my hat back on so I don't get all self-conscious about this hairline that the haters insist is bad. I never saw a problem with my hairline, but let's get this hat back on. It's a little chilly out. The air is changing. The air is getting better. Spring is in the air, thankfully though. Good times are ahead, but it's been a super slow news day. I've been browsing the news. I've been looking at all the reports out there. I've been trying to see what I want to talk about, and truthfully, oh, he's bald. Yeah, I'm bald. I'm super bald. The problem is now that I have long hair, I tie my hair back, and I think that's really not causing baldness, but it also gives me the appearance of a shorter hairline, I think. Maybe that's just copium, though. Maybe that's just copium. Maybe I'm just receding hairline. Maybe I'm doomed. I'll say this. Both my grandparents died with a full head of hair, though, so I'm looking forward to that. I'm actually weirdly looking forward to this turning gray because I feel like I'm going to look like Zeus, and I'll just throw thunderbolts at my enemies. But, 2009 Lifeguard, welcome back, man. Appreciate you being here once again. So listen, I stopped that in my 20s. You stopped what? What did you stop? What'd you stop doing? Growing your hair? That happens. That happens to a lot of guys. Hey, for anybody who's bald, it's just a sign of high testosterone. So it's not even a bad thing, right? But like I said, let me put this hat back on. Tim Pool vibes, right? That's the other thing I see in the chat from the haters. They're like, are you trying to be like Tim Pool or something? You stopped the long hair? Yeah. See, I'm in my early 30s now, and I still have the long hair, my family doesn't tend to go gray until they're in their 40s. So I got a lot of time on the color and the length and everything. I do want to get it cut though, because it's been, the problem with the long hair is the longer it gets, the thinner it gets. I used to have like medium thickness on my hair, and it's still not terribly thin, but it's a little bit more thin than I'd like it to be. Anyways, regardless, I didn't mean to open up like this. I meant to open up organized as usual. And the fact of the matter is, it's a slow news day. I almost didn't even feel like streaming because I was like, man, there's just not even that much to talk about. So, but 2009 Lifeguard, he says, I'll keep telling my 56-year-old self about the testosterone. Yeah, man. Hey, I mean, listen, that's what it is. If you're bald, it's high testosterone, man. You're in a good spot, I'd say. And 56 nowadays, 56 is young. So, okay, on point here. This is going to be more of a offshoot kind of day. I still have some notes taken down, but I wanted to discuss basically what I've been noticing. The theme with President Donald Trump, this generational gap. Now that I know 2009 Lifeguard's only 56, I know that when I rag on boomers, he's not actually offended because he's not a boomer. So that's even better news. Because that's the one thing I'm always worried about. I'm like, man, I don't want individual boomers to think that I hate them. I just hate the generation of boomers as a whole. I just despise them. The more I get older, the more I experience life and the economy, the more I look back on history, both in bipartisan fashion, the more I realize, man, boomers really fucked us over, didn't they? So and Gen Xers, they're kind of like 2009 Lifeguards, a Gen Xer. Glenn, you're either, if I remember correctly, you're either an older millennial or you are a Gen Xer as well. Gen Xers get overlooked a lot. They're kind of like the new silent generation almost, where it's like they're not really thought about too much. They're in definitely a better position than millennials and Gen Zers are, but they also kind of, like boomers kind of just like ignored them, which is kind of sad as well. You're a millennial, Glenn? Yeah, same. I'm on the young end of the millennial spectrum. So the theme though is when I'm looking at what Trump is doing. Hey, what's up, Dil? I don't even know how to say that name, man. Scientia. I don't know how to say that, but welcome. What I'm looking at, what I'm wondering, the theme that I've been noticing, like I've been pointing out on these streams, the generational gap. It is happening right now. Truly, it is. There's a generational gap that's going on because boomers, for the first time now in decades, are starting to lose power. In the next 10 years, this country and the way we do our politics is going to be radically transformed, in fact. Because boomers, I think, are currently sitting at, was it anywhere between 50 to 60% control of our government as a whole, and that number is only going to decline as Gen X and then especially millennials and Gen Zers wind up being more represented. And what I'm really like noticing is that there's just a massive difference in perception of America between the generational gap. And I just said 2009 lifeguards are Gen Xer. We don't hate on the Gen Xers that much here, but the divide really is going to be in a lot of cases between Gen X, boomers, millennials, Gen Z. Gen Xers, there's no hate because they didn't really ruin us the way boomers did. But Gen Xers they're in a decent spot now. A lot of Gen Xers own homes. I'm going to cover the housing market on this episode. Most homeowners are boomers. Then under that is Gen X, of course. And then you have millennials, which are in not a great spot. And then Gen Z, which is in a terrible spot. And basically, one of his biggest problems for sure is, in fact, that he's a boomer. What you notice is he's an out-of-touch boomer, in all honesty. A lot of his decisions are made based off of old ways of thinking. He's very concerned with his image in the media, for instance, which is just outdated. He may not ever admit to being concerned about how he appears to mainstream media, but you can tell by the way he talks about it that I think he secretly fantasizes about one day the mainstream media being forced to give him his props and being forced to acknowledge all the good that he's done. And the fact of the matter is that day's never coming. The mainstream media is so left-leaning as a whole and so corrupt that their only job is to only ever form narratives against conservatives and speak rhetoric that goes against the conservative agenda. But Trump, nevertheless, it bothers him, and you can tell it bothers him. And it's funny that it does. He makes funny comments about, and who are you with exactly? Oh, CNN. Okay, we're gonna skip you then because I don't even understand how CNN's in business. I really don't. So it's funny, but he does pander to them still. And, you won't see that out of millennials or Gen X. We despise mainstream media. I don't watch the news. I don't even watch TV anymore. And that's just one small, more minor, more humorous example of the generational gap. I get my news off of the internet. I do my own independent research. I'm not bothered by left-leaning slanted news articles or right-leaning. I read them all. I'll read New York Times. I'll read New York Post. I'll watch CNN clips on Fox. I'll watch Fox News clips or CNN clips on YouTube. I'll watch Fox News clips on YouTube. I'll watch independent channels. I watch a lot of independent YouTubers out there. I like to see where their heads are at. So I'll watch a channel called what's it called? EJ Talks or something like that. Matt Morse is another one that I'll check out. I'll even watch the Young Turks. I don't care. I like to see what everyone's thinking. That's not something boomers do a whole lot of. Boomers will turn on Fox News or CNN depending on their party affiliation, and they'll take what's being said to them as gospel. And that's just not how young people operate. I view those as comedic shows. I'll watch Fox News as a parody. I'll watch it ironically. I'll watch CNN ironically. I like to just laugh at the absurdities that they're speaking. So that's the big problem with Trump. He is an out-of-touch boomer. And as a result, I was watching another great example of a show that I'll watch. I just found this guy on YouTube recently. His name's Owen Schroyer. Owen Schroyer, I think. He used to work with Alex Jones, I guess. There was a big fight between the two of them. He does his own thing now. And he had Marjorie Taylor Greene on today. And it's like, these independent YouTubers, they do a better job interviewing a lot of these politicians out there than, what CNN or Fox News will do. And so I was watching Owen Schroyer, and he said something that it made me think about this, and that's why I'm actually doing this whole episode today based off what he said. He said, I've been saying for a while now, Trump is the boomers' last gasp. And I thought, you know what, that's pretty spot on. And Owen went on to say, he said, I originally thought that Trump actually undo a lot of these old boomer policies, but it actually seems like he's their last gasp in the fact that he's actually trying to solidify it as long as possible for them to prosper once again at the expense of the young generations. And that's been one of my biggest gripes on this channel. It's ass backwards, in all honesty. I know there's this whole, we got to take care of our elders, we got to respect our elders, they're old, they're feeble, they're in a rough spot, etc., etc. And from a societal standpoint, I do want old people to be taken care of, but I view it from a more traditional lens. The government shouldn't be stepping in to do that. And that may scare a lot of old boomers because they live their life in accordance to the idea that Social Security and other entitlements would be there for them waiting for retirement, right? They want to retire, live off Social Security, they want to use Medicare, etc. Those, to me, are socialist policies. If we were truly living in a free market capitalist society, those kind of entitlements wouldn't exist. It's generational welfare, and it's collapsing in real time. And so now we're at a point once again with those kind of examples where boomers are living once again off of millennials and Gen Zers in the workforce. And the reason why Social Security is collapsing is because when it was created, I believe back in 1939, you had something to the effect of 43 workers in the workforce to every one Social Security recipient. You fast forward to modern day, and that number is at an only 2-to-1 ratio, and it's collapsing. I believe it's going to be at 1.5-to-1 very soon. And so it can't support itself. It's eating away at our national debt. The government, as always, has to step in to do bailouts. The government borrowed from Social Security. I mean, it's a disaster. And now the result of that is you have young generations growing up, Gen Zers. You have to understand the detachment style. You know, the boomers will adamantly defend capitalism, and they'll say, don't you understand how bad someone like Zohran Mamdani is in socialism? Don't you get where socialism leads? And Gen Zers will sit there, rightfully so, and they'll say, yeah, we learned that in school, sort of. But guess what? Capitalism's clearly not working. I can't own a home. I can barely afford to pay rent. In fact, I'm living at home. I can't find a job. I can't afford groceries. And then you have a Zohran Mamdani-like figure rise up and say, hey, we'll address these issues. I'm going to figure out affordable housing for you guys. I'm going to make sure that we lower grocery costs by any means necessary. And that becomes very appealing. And there's no reference point for young generations to look back on, because everything that happened that was bad with socialism and communism happens years or decades ago at this point, or it's happening on the other side of the world. And so they understand only from what they've been taught, but they've never experienced it or been around people who have. And that's really the problem. And Trump is sitting there now, and he's acting as if it's the boomers that he needs to win over, when the fact of the matter is the boomers are less important than ever. I don't care that they're old. Like I said, I look at them from a traditional lens. Society should take care of its elders. They deserve that, but not from the standpoint of socialist policies or borderline socialist policies like Social Security and welfare, Medicare. It should be communities that do that. You should have, first and foremost, a family, and you should have multiple children. At least one of your kids should grow up liking you enough to help you out when you're older, right? That's kind of the premise. That's kind of the natural order. On top of that, you should have church-like communities. The church does a great job, if you find a good church, of taking care of its elders. There's a deacons fund for that, etc. But the problem with that is, and again, this is where boomers really wrecked us, feminism crept in, individualism crept in, social entitlements crept in even more, strengthened even more, crony capitalism grew, all under boomers. They moved away from religion. They became more liberal and individualistic. And as a result, they really disregarded a lot of these traditional values that really are what keeps our community strong and keeps America great. And so now they're outraged over stuff. They're outraged over the fact that Social Security is, they paid into it and they're not going to receive the full benefits. Meanwhile, millennials sit there and we think, we're paying into that for you and we're not going to get any of it. So what the fuck are you complaining about? But all of that is to say, the point of this episode tonight, like I said, is to point out how Trump is making all the wrong choices, losing popularity with the youth because he's acting like a boomer too much. And, there's news today, for instance, that inflation was down again today. That's great news. I love that from the standpoint of, here on this channel, I'm in favor of the Trump tariffs. I made the prediction in April of last year on this channel that it would not negatively affect our economy, the tariffs, if they were being done properly. And it's one of the good things Trump did, the Trump tariffs. I made money off of it, by the way. I'll go on to say later that millennials and Gen Zers don't invest in the stock market at the right amount to be able to profit off of it, which is why Trump's error is assuming the stock market is solely representative of the economy, because that's how Trump looks at it. But I'll freely say, even though I didn't make a fortune because I just didn't have enough capital, I made money after the April 8th tariff dip. I bought NVIDIA at 96 a share, sold it for 180 something a share. I made a lot of money doing that. I made great returns. And so I've always predicted that the Trump tariffs would be good, and that this Great Depression that was supposed to be here by last summer wasn't going to happen. And so inflation was down today. Good news. It's the lowest it's been since 2021, which is almost basically then at pre-COVID levels. That's good. But the fact of the matter is, when you look at the inflation, you understand what inflation means, that just means that our dollar value is not lowering as fast and our prices aren't going up as fast. It doesn't mean that the economy is going to get better and that the cost of living crisis is going to end. We're still struggling with a cost of living issue here in this country. Excuse me. We're still struggling with the cost of living. Consumer prices are up. I just covered that yesterday. They're up 1.9 to 2.4% year over year. A lot of price. Orange juice is 28% more expensive since last year. Beef is 15% more expensive since last year. And beef actually does correlate with tariffs. Tariffs weren't going to be implemented pain-free. That much I already said as well all that time ago last year. But the fact of the matter is prices are up. It's more unaffordable for us, especially for young people, whereas the boomers have had a whole lifetime to be more insulated from this effect. And the stock market is not solely the economy. So the boomers are insulated because of the housing market and because of the stock. That's the same stuff, coincidentally, that's playing into this generational gap, because those are the same things that the millennials and Gen Zers have an issue with. Only 50% of people under age 35 have a 401k. And so the other half of us are still struggling. We don't have deep ties in the stock market like boomers do with a 401k or a lifetime of living that's allowed them to invest heavily in that. We weren't able to buy our homes at $18,000 and sit on now $587,000 of equity worth in that house. Meanwhile, you have Trump, when it comes to the housing market, he wants the housing prices to remain high, and he openly said that. And while someone will say, oh, well, that wasn't Trump taking the boomer side, yeah, it was. That is what it is. And I'm going to break it down for you right now and how it was Trump taking the boomer side when he said that. When he said, well, I want people to feel rich. I want people who own homes to feel rich. He's talking about boomers, and here's why. I have the breakdown per generation on homeowners. 79.9% of boomers own homes. When it comes to Gen Xers, 72.7% of them own homes. Then you get to millennials. 55% only own homes. They're way behind where boomers were at the same age range, and I'll cover that in a second. And then you get to Gen Z, which is perhaps the most depressing. 27.1% of Gen Z owns homes. And so when Trump is out there saying, I want housing market prices to go up, it should remain high so Americans can feel rich that own homes, he's talking about boomers and Xers, especially boomers. He's not talking about millennials. He's not talking certainly about Gen Z. And that's just a big problem. Big problem. And the fact of the matter is, when boomers were in their mid-30s, which is the median range now for millennials, whereas, like I said, it's 55% of millennials own homes, and millennials are in their 40s, the higher up you go in the millennial age bracket, the higher the percentage of millennials that own homes. I'm on the youngest end of the millennial spectrum, for instance. And so I'm in my early 30s, but the oldest millennials, I believe, are 41 right now, or 40. Boomers were at 64% of home ownership by the time they were 36. So millennials are behind on this by a decent amount. It's an alarming amount, in fact. I've also covered in past episodes the average age median home buyer 20 years ago was age 39. 20 years later, it's now 59. So the same people buying homes 20 years ago are literally the same people buying homes now. And what you're seeing is boomers pulling out all of that massive equity that they earned because they bought their home for 17 grand. They're pulling out all that equity and they're buying a second home. And then they're selling homes to each other because they're the only ones that can afford this. Even worse yet, it was boomers' policies throughout the decades now. Ever since we can go back to the late 70s where you actually can't fully blame the boomers for it, but then certainly in the Clinton administration when boomers had complete control of the government essentially, the housing market got ruined because of that as well. I'm going to cover that in 1 second. I'll take a look at some chats because I know chats are coming in. Millennial here, multi-home owner. Good for you. You're not the norm. We need to build homes. I do agree with that. Building homes would help, certainly. Boomers are insulated by living harder lives than. Wait, hold on. Let me get ready to try to take that seriously. Yeah, I see the other comment. Brutal is just trolling. Yeah, it's got to be, but I'll read it anyway. Brutal facts too. What a name for a chat like this. Boomers are insulated by living harder lives than you could imagine. Wait, without constantly complaining about others having more than them. Wow, that's excellent. Wow, you win rage bait chat of the day. Hey, Shadow Warfare's in here as well. I appreciate you, Shadow Warfare. Good to have you back. Shadow Warfare and Glenn might recognize me from my older streaming days. They were loyal viewers back then on Twitch. Shadow Warfare says, as one of the oldest in Gen Z, I am up almost 20% in the market. Unfortunately, I have less than $1,000 invested. Yeah, so congratulations on making $190. You're killing it. Now, if you just follow the Boomers' advice and you stop buying that $4 coffee every day and maybe cancel your Spotify premium that costs, what is it, $15 a month, you'll be able to use that $190 to put it on a down payment towards a $500,000 home, right? That's Boomer logic, right? So good job, Shadow Warfare. And I echo that, by the way. The amount of money that I'm ever able to invest in the stock market seems to be about $1,000 or less. Soon I'll have a lot of capital, but in a couple of years, because I own a business that's going to do really well. But for now, yeah, I feel your pain, man. Is this just homeless people blaming others? Correct. I live in my car. Yes. I live in my car because I didn't cancel my Spotify premium. And, I wanted something like Spotify Premium. I wanted a $4 coffee every day. Actually, I don't drink coffee. A $3 energy drink every day. I have a premium gym membership package that costs about $32 a month. And so, I'm poor. I have to live in a car because of that, because I didn't listen to Boomer's advice. I didn't cancel these amenities that just cost a fortune. It has nothing to do with real wage growth, inflation, a poor housing market, cost of living crisis. None of that. It just has everything to do with the fact that I dared to go out and pay for stuff that I wanted. Big issue. Boomers never paid for anything they wanted. They just sacrificed and scrimped and saved. And now look where they're at. They're just so much smarter than us, guys. Anyways. Oh, let's see. Hang on, wait. Let me see another one. Our ancestors lived in caves and huts. What are you complaining about? I love it. I wonder if the trolls are actual people or just bots connected to an LLM. Sometimes I wonder that too. I think sadly they are actual people, and I think mostly they're like swine, I compare them to like swine. They paid for things they could afford. Oh, yeah. I grew up under Boomers, and I grew up in a two-parent household. My mom stayed at home. My dad bought two cars. My dad owned a home, bought two cars, worked one job while he was doing it, and easily afforded, before we owned the home, rent for them in the duplex that I grew up in. A whole side of a house, 2 stories, was $450 a month in rent, while my dad owned 2 cars, one for my mom to drive to the grocery store in while he went to work. Okay. All right, so I don't want to hear Spotify Premium at $15 a month is costing me. I can't afford that. I should just cancel it. I saw the Boomer lifestyle. I am a 90s kid. You cannot pull the wool over my eyes. I lived it, and I know for a fact that Boomers are the generation that had it the easiest. They are the generation that had it easier than their parents and now have it easier than their kids. And I'm going to explain to you right now how that started, or one of the ways that started. Boomer policy is what ruined our housing market. Our housing market is beyond fucked now. Like I said, only 55% of millennials as a whole own houses, and that's in large part because of the older millennials who are in their 40s that are buying houses. The average age median home buyer is at 59, and a lot of people aren't even buying their homes until age 39 at the very least. That's way too high of a number. Men want to grow up and they want to own a home, get married, and start a family. And society would be so much better off if men were able to do that in their late 20s, like the Boomers were afforded the option to be able to do. But they can't. And the housing market was originally ruined by boomer policy, especially starting with the Community Reinvestment Act in 1977. Now, at this point in time, there were definitely boomers that were holding positions of power in our government, so they're not exonerated from this, but it wasn't all boomers yet, obviously, too. It was the generation before them in 1977 collectively coming together to start this. This was started under Jimmy Carter, by the way, a Democrat, who forced banks to loan money in low-income neighborhoods that banks had been redlining previously for obvious reasons. Jimmy Carter, a Democrat, said, well, don't you think everyone deserves the right to own a home? No, actually, they don't. It should be based off of certain scores and certain options, certain like metrics here. Banks were discriminating against zip-coded areas for a reason. I think we can all understand why. And then you have a Democrat, Jimmy Carter, comes in and says, no, you have to. You have to loan money now. You can no longer discriminate against that. Otherwise, the regulators would fine any bank that didn't follow these regulations. And so this is what really kicked it off. But Bill Clinton came along in the 90s and he juiced it up even more. And this is where I say the boomers really ruined it, because by the time the 90s were rolling around, boomers had pretty much complete control of our government. Bill Clinton came in and introduced, this is the longest name ever for an act. It makes me pissed off even more that it's this long of a name. But he introduced the Federal Housing Enterprises Financial Safety and Soundness Act. And this is where the subprime optimal loans came in. This is where Bill Clinton said, I really like Jimmy Carter. He was a great president. And I want to expand on what he was trying to get done in the late 70s there. This is where Bill Clinton stepped in and ordered Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac to basically, hold on. Let me explain what Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac is for people in layman's terms. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are not government firms. They're private firms, but they're semi-governmental because they're private firms that are backed by the government. So Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac come in, and basically what happens is Jimmy Carter introduces this act, then Clinton juices it up, and then you have private firms that come in and they see the option to capitalize off of this. And so they come in and they basically they swoop in and they buy up the debt from the suboptimal loan, the subprime customer, basically poor people who shouldn't be in the position to be owning homes. They come in, they buy up the debt as a whole, and they say, you don't pay the bank anymore, you pay us. This replenishes the bank's reserves right away, much quicker than they should be getting it back, because obviously the way the loan works is it's interest-based and time-based. Fannie Mae comes in, gives the bank the full loan amount in money, and then instructs the homeowner now to pay them instead. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac then go and they take that loan, they break it up into pieces, and they sell it to Wall Street investors. Wall Street investors buy it up because they know that the government will never let the loan go bad. They'll never let the defaults go bad in theory because Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are backed by our government. Clinton made sure it was so. And so that's what's actually going on here with these private firms. This is what caused, by the way, the 2008 housing market crash. It didn't take long. You can quickly see how this became a death spiral, in fact, because the banks being replenished on that loan amount so much quicker than they should have been. We're talking it should be obviously 30 years. Instead, they get it back almost instantly from Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac buying it outright. So the banks start loaning them out even faster because they're getting paid by Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac to do so. So it's a win-win for the banks, or at least it seems. And it's a win-win for Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac who sell the broken up debt to Wall Street investors. And it's a win-win in appearance to Wall Street investors who understand that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are backed by the government. And so what winds up happening is anytime a loan is defaulted on by these low credit homeowners, these suboptimal, subprime they call it, recipients, the government bails it out and says, no, we'll take care of it. This is almost socialism, really. Once again, another theme you'll see with boomers, they love and embrace socialism while touting how great capitalism is. But everything that boomers love, they look forward to their Social Security, socialism. They look forward to their Medicare, socialism. They look forward to these, or they implemented this whole, fucking subprime loans and government bailouts, basically socialism. At the very least, you can call it crony capitalism. And that's really what this came down to. And so what wound up happening is in 2007, the defaults on these loans from these banks ramping up the pace in which they were giving them out, not fearing anything because Fannie Mae was there to buy them up, and Fannie Mae not fearing buying them up because the government was backing them. Well, the defaults kept piling up because they built such a massive base of homeowners that were low credit homeowners and low propensity payers, people that couldn't afford the homes in actuality. The defaults started piling up to tsunami levels, and 2007 happened and it all burst. And when was 2007, 2008? I'll tell you when that was. That was when millennials were getting ready to move out of mommy and daddy's home and ideally go buy their own home, maybe rent for a few years and buy their own home. Not so fast. Housing market crashes. And it wound up being $700 billion that the government had to bail out, which crushed our economy even more, hurt us in the long run even more. At this point in time, though, guess what? Boomers already own their homes. And so even though the housing market crashed and was bad for them in the short term because now their property values have gone down, obviously, that rebounds, of course, over time. So boomers already own their homes during this housing market crash. Millennials were like starting to be in high school, starting to get ready for their life. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, never mind. Everything's shit now, but good luck out there. Make sure not to buy your $4 coffee. If you just save $4 a day, I can't tell you, I heard that while I was in high school so much. Guys, Starbucks trying to charge you $4 for coffee every day. Do you know how much it could change your life if you just saved $4 a day? Do you understand that? That's $120 a month. Like, it's unreal. It's unreal. All the while, on the other end of it, boomers are then preaching to us. While I'm 13 years old, I kid you not, 12 years old, in fact. They're preaching to millennials, and they're telling us, you guys are the most selfish and entitled generation of all time. There's something seriously wrong with you. I mean, you don't understand what we went through as a kid, okay? I used to have to walk 1 mile to the grocery store in the snow, up hills both ways, to buy groceries for my parents because otherwise they would beat the shit out of me. You guys have it so good, you just don't understand. Well, guess what? Everything sucked by the time I graduated high school, so I used to ride my bike 5.5 fucking miles to my job and 5.5 miles back against the wind both ways, sometimes in the snow, just so I could have an assistant manager job that was paying me $1 an hour more than minimum wage because I couldn't afford a car by the time I was ready to hit my life, and I couldn't afford anything. So I don't want to hear the boomer slop bullshit from this boomer generation. They fucked everything up. We're now dealing with that. And then they want to sit here and say, well, it's your fault. It's your fault, damn it. We just want our Social Security and you fuckers don't want to work and you guys don't know how to save anything. We scrimped and saved. No, the fuck you didn't. You had everything. You had it infinitely better than your parents did, who came out of Great Depression level eras of economic disaster, world wars, etc. You guys had it made. And that's why this generation's so soft. And the boomer generation being as soft as it is, Trump is a byproduct of that. And we see it with everything. We see it with his policy implementations. We see it with thought process. He's a cuck. He talks about, I need to listen to my wife more. Oh, immigration's a great thing. I'm going to cover that in a second, too. Meanwhile, he's just doubling down on the policies that were implemented by boomers that have made everything so shit. We'll get to that in a second. I'll take a look at some comments. Good to see you back again, Scruffy901. Then Hitler had his own fucking stupid definition. Socialism has too many definitions that you need to specify what type of socialism is just genuinely is in order for it to make sense. Well, I'll explain it to you like this. Social Security, for instance, is not full-blown socialism because it's paid into by the younger generations to benefit the older generations with the idea that continually ladders down, But it's controlled by the government, which, the government takes money out of it when they need to, or they already did at some point. It's controlled by the government. It's administered by the government. It's socialism. And it's generational welfare as well. And these are just the things that are just absolutely stupid, in my opinion. Like, I hope I get to live to see the day where boomers are ripped off Social Security. Make these fuckers return to the workforce. They want to talk about how they deal with their hardships better than any generation. Let's see them deal with those hardships when they're fucking 78 years old then and they're forced to go back to work. Let's see how they don't complain then, huh? Let's see what happens then to these boomers. Oh, you kids today have it so easy. You complain about everything. We complained about nothing. Let's see what happens when 78-year-old boomers have to go back to work because Social Security collapses. Let's see what that's like. But regardless, socialism is basically the government, in my opinion. It's government-funded anything. And even though Social Security is not directly funded by the government, it's backed by the government, it's supported by the government, it's administered to the government. It's not like I'm paying into Social Security right now, and then I go to a boomer's door and say, hey, here's a chunk of my paycheck to you just to keep your crusty ass alive. That's not how it works. So it's a problem. Medicare, a problem. These things to me are honestly stupid. Get married, like the ideal society is you get married, you have a big family, you have 5 kids, you fucking piss off 2 of them that don't want to talk to you anymore. 2 of them are neutral to you. 1 of them still loves you and is desperate for your approval. That's the one that takes care of you. Let's just be real. That's how it works, or that's how it's supposed to work. You go to church every Sunday. You build it. You get involved in a church community. There's a deacons fund. There's good people in the church of all different wealth classes. They help you out when they need to. That's how it's supposed to be. It's not supposed to be turn to the government so that you can stay alive well past your prime. It's supposed to be work hard, save your money, do the right thing, make smart investments, and then if you still find yourself in a position of need, you're supposed to be involved in communities that do that for you. That's how it's really supposed to be. It shouldn't be I'm forced to take care of boomers because I have to pay into Social Security that I'll never receive. It's ass backwards, as always. That's just what it is. Boomers had Vietnam, that's it. Yeah. I mean, boomers had Vietnam. Gen X had, Operation Desert Storm. Millennials grew up during the Middle East wars. Like, no generation has it easy. And this is not supposed to be just about hating boomers. But the fact of the matter is, Trump is a boomer, and that's a large part of his problem, in my opinion. And we keep delving into that on why. He wants the housing prices to go up. He's offering solutions like 50-year fucking mortgages. And it's like, that's the kind of slop that they expect us to eat because boomers were simpletons. They grew up in simpler times. They didn't have the internet. They didn't have all this information at their fingertips, and they thought more simply. They read their newspapers. They watched the news at 6 p.m. every night, and they took that as, rock solid. They went, oh, this is happening. It's us now that has to question everything, and rightfully so. So if boomers were told 50-year mortgages were going to be a great thing, and it was going to allow them to buy a home sooner, back then they would have clapped and cheered for it, especially if it was a partisan president that they voted for. But that's just not how it works anymore. We see through that bullshit. We go 50 fucking year mortgages, so enslave myself to debt for 50 years on one home? What if I want to move 20? Like, no, terrible idea. But there they are floating it. They haven't talked about it since because it went over disastrously, and rightfully so. But nevertheless, these are the kind of solutions we're being offered. And again, it's being done in a fashion where it's like Trump does it from a boomer perspective. He does it from this perspective of, oh, let them eat cake. They'll take what I give them and they'll be happy about it. Because boomers always toe the party line. We don't toe the party line anymore. I'm staying my ass home during midterms. I want Democrats to flood in our government. I want Republicans ousted. I want midterms to be so disastrous for Republicans that they're ousted and that Trump gets impeached. Like, this is what they deserve. I'm socially conservative. I'm fiscally conservative. But if this administration is not going to serve my interests, which is why I vote to begin with, then I want them fucking gone. I want them all gone. I want them to suffer for failing me as an American. And if you think I'm the only one that thinks like this as a younger person, you should look at Gen Z. There's this collective thought process that's growing in this nation. It's a thought process of, no, we will not toe the party line. No, we will not vote in midterms just so that Trump can't get impeached. No, we will not vote for the lesser of two evils. These are all boomer notions, and this is what Trump is counting on. This is what Republicans are counting on. Speaker Mike Johnson, he doesn't feel like he has to represent us in Congress. Leader John Thune, he doesn't feel like he has to pass the SAVE Act or represent us in Senate. None of these senators or congressmen feel like they have to represent us because they're counting on us voting for them no matter what, especially on the Republican side of the aisle. The liberals have made the opposite mistake. They've gone so far off the deep end that they don't care how crazy they seem, and it turns off a lot of moderates and independents, which is good. The Republicans, on the other hand, they look at it as, well, we're trying to make America more conservative. We're trying to stick to traditional values. So they're going to vote for us regardless if we represent them on what they want or not, because we're the lesser of two evils. No, it's not going to work that way anymore. And you're dealing with a generation that realizes, two generations, millennials and especially Gen Z, and we realize how fucked we are. And we want results, not just words, not just empty promises. We want results, and we're paying attention. I tried to avoid politics in my early 20s, and I wish I would have gotten involved sooner. But here I am in my early 30s now paying attention, and I'm understanding just how bad it really is. Gen Z is more politically involved than millennials were at their age because, there's a joke that Gen Zers are aging worse than millennials, and there's like scientific studies that are starting to back this. That's because millennials were the last generation that at least felt like they were going to have it just as good as their parents. Now we know it's a lie, Now I'm making up for lost time in my aging, but in my 20s I looked better than Gen Zers do. Gen Zers are stressed the fuck out. Their jobs are all being replaced. They can't find work. They're living at home still. Women suck. There's no good spouses out there for Gen Z men, Like AI is going to take over. They can't afford homes. They'll never own a home. And so that's why you're getting this kind of a reaction, and this generational gap is happening right now. So it is what it is. But, Trump is, excuse me. Actually, let me take a look at chat before I move on, before I continue on here. Stephanie Boyles 9690 says, yeah, that's why I'm still paying on my dad's 50-year fixed after he's dead, just because I don't want to lose our child at home. Yeah. No kidding. 50-year mortgage is another bubble. It's a huge PTS demon. It's a huge bubble. That would be a massive trap. But the problem is, it's what's his name? Oh, I can't. Not Roots. That's the Secretary General of NATO. There's a guy, I can't remember his name now, but he's the one that proposed this, and it's like, well, he's involved in real estate in his personal life. He's involved with big time real estate companies, so he loves the idea of 50-year mortgages because he'd capitalize on it. And he's in the Trump. This guy, I can't remember his name now. I think it's Mark something or other. But he's the one that proposed it. And when you find out what he does in his personal life, you're like, oh, that makes sense. You're going to make gains off of a 50-year mortgage. Nobody else will. Americans are going to get fucked by 50-year mortgages. We all know it's a trap. It's a massive debt trap, and it is another bubble. It would literally spiral into another like 2037 housing market crash at that point, So I'm glad it got the pushback, really. Retirement is a fairly new concept anyway, says Dreddy Naught. Yeah. Retirement, I'm all for retirement, but retirement should be earned, not given, truthfully. Like retirement should be earned, and it's earned by, once again, making smart investments while you're younger, being smarter with your money. Like, how sad is it that boomers grew up in the best economic times? They had the best housing market at their fingertips. They had the lowest cost of living ever, pretty much, in American recorded history. And now they're still like, please don't touch my Social Security. I'll die without it. Like, you just managed your money that poorly. Then you want to give millennials advice on not buying a fucking $4 cup of coffee every day? Give me a break, bitch. But yes, I agree with that. Retirement shouldn't be a concept that we have to rule out, but it should be handled differently. You're not owed a retirement. That's something you earn. So, and if you can't retire because you've been dumb, that's the whole point of community. Then you have to be supported, but you're a burden to society, but at the very least, it's the community that takes care of you, not the government mandating the community to take care of you. That's one of my biggest gripes about everything. Completely agree, says Stephanie Boyles. Thank you. I'm going to scroll up the chat here. Ziggy Rotten says, I'm old as hell, and I've watched the generational pendulum switch so many times. Yeah, I mean, that's what happened. You live long enough, you have a storied life, and you do see that a lot, right? So, makes sense. Mark Fisher. He's the only name that can come to name with Mark, says Scruffy. I don't remember. I can't remember his name. He's the one that's overseeing the housing market pretty much in the Trump administration. I used to know it. I gave my 30-year-old a house, says George Ebling. Well, that's very nice of you. Dumb Takes says fresh, lesh, whatever. Let me see. What do you look like? I can't even see. I can't blow up your photo, but I wonder what generation you're a part of. After the Great Depression, people just died in the streets. Okay. Metallica and Slipknot will take the stage. What are you? Who? Sorry, but that's off topic. I'm not even going to address it. Okay. The other thing that I've noticed with Trump and his boomer approach to everything and how it's failing us, he's sort of echoing what I'm noticing in this current jobs market too. So it's not just the housing market where Trump is sort of fortifying this notion of pricing millennials and Gen Z out of the housing market by openly advocating for an increase in housing market costs. He wants housing prices to go up for the sake of boomers, and I covered that and explained how that is, because only 27% of Gen Zers own houses, while 79.9% of boomers own houses. So when Trump says that, he's literally taking the boomer side. The generation that will be pretty much dead in the next 20 years. Meanwhile, millennials are still middle-aged and Gen Zers are really just starting to hit middle-aged. We're the future, but we're not being prioritized. That's why it's asked backwards. But on top of that, you go back in time too and you realize boomers had a massive hand in selling our jobs overseas to China and also fortifying that and stealing that in too. And so Trump is echoing that, and I'm going to get to that how in just a second. But going back to 1972, once again, this is really before boomers had a super grasp on our government. But Nixon visited China in 1972 to develop relations with them, and this is kind of where that started. But then the boomers come along and they fortify that, and they really solidify that with Ronald Reagan. I'm not going to just exonerate Ronald Reagan because he's a Republican. I just shat on Bill Clinton and what's his name for being Democrats. Democrats have ruined us for sure, but Republicans are not guiltless either. And Ronald Reagan gets this notion of being the best president of all time. And in a lot of ways he was, but he made several key mistakes that have really fucked us over that people really like to try to forget. Ronald Reagan signed the U.S.-China trade agreement in 1984. And this agreement is really what set us up for failure where we're at now. And boomers were loving every second of it. And so you have China at this point allowed our companies, our American companies, specifically manufacturing ones, factories, etc., to set up shop overseas in China, where they could then hire Chinese workers to do labor for pennies on the dollar. All the while, Reagan agreed to lower our tariffs on Chinese products so that all these products coming in were now lower in price that were coming in from China on both ends. And you have American companies that are now opening up shop in China and hiring Chinese workers for pennies on the dollar, which allowed them to lower their costs. Now, all of a sudden, t-shirts are 50 cents. Boomers were eating this up. They grew up in the best economic times from a housing market perspective and cost of living perspective. And even though this was costing America all of these jobs in the long run, boomers once again were semi-insulated from this because they already had jobs. And even though they sold everything out overseas at this point in time, it didn't wind up affecting them nearly as badly as it did Gen X, for instance. At this point in time, because of this, factory jobs vanished. We got wiped out because it was a no-brainer from a corporate standpoint. If you can hire Chinese workers for literally like 30 cents an hour, as opposed to at that point in time having to pay minimum wage to an American worker, you're going to do it if you can. It's way more profitable. We should have never opened this window, but Reagan did it. Reagan really he solidified Nixon's visit to China in 1972. And so we wound up losing close to 2 million jobs in just 10 years' time after Reagan signed this in, fucking over Americans, especially Gen Xers. Boomers were probably hurt by this too. It's not like boomers didn't hold some of these jobs. But this set us up for royal failure. And it only kept getting worse as we crept into the 2000s, where more and more of our manufacturing went overseas. Steel companies, Trump rags about that. Trump is trying to bring back manufacturing, by the way. So it's not even a harsh, full-blown criticism of Trump. He's actually done a good job of getting investments into America. But the problem is, firstly, these are pledged investments. So we got to wait to see how that plays out, because a lot of these companies will lie to these presidents and they'll say, well, we pledged to invest $110 million into manufacturing in America over the next 5 years. The reason why they say that, 4 or 5 years especially, is because they're banking on slow rolling the development of these manufacturing companies and factories here in America, slowly building them for the first 3.5, 4 years. And then if the president's not reelected, and in Trump's case, he definitely won't be, obviously, then they pull out. They're like, oh, never mind, we changed our mind. We're going back to China. And they pack their shit up and they go right back. So we got to wait to see how that plays out with the manufacturing. But at least Trump is trying on that. The big problem is, Trump favors H-1B visas. Trump loves the idea of Indians coming into this country and doing the jobs that Americans should be doing. And he's been open about this. He was in that disastrous Laura Ingraham interview where he literally said, well, the Americans can't do the jobs. They're just not smart enough. We need the Indians to come in here to teach us. And his thought process is not the worst. The idea being, of course, that the Indians will come in and teach the Americans how to do the job. Us stupid fucking Americans. You know, we got to learn from these Indians that literally eat cow shit pies and think they're tasty and throw their trash in their rivers as a form of worship to a pagan god and ruin their rivers and their waterways. By the way, when they come here, they do the same shit. There's videos of them throwing trash in our water and polluting our waters because their pagan god follows them. So it's their form of worship. It's disgusting. But we allow these people into this country because they're quote unquote smarter than us. And down the line, they're supposed to be teaching us. But we all know that's never going to happen. And the reason why it's not going to happen is because the corporations don't want Americans holding these jobs. Because, you know, us young Americans who want to own a home someday and are looking at $600,000 home prices, we go to these companies and we say, well, we need to be making $27 an hour and we need full benefits and we're going to be working 8-hour days. The Indians come here and they say, well, we'll do it for $16 an hour. We'll work 12-hour days and we'll never complain. And you don't have to give us full benefits. So even now, they may not be able to pay Indians pennies on the dollar, but they're paying them far less, and the Indians are happy about it because our dollar is worth infinitely more than their currency. So they look at $16 an hour and they go, I'm fucking rich. A millennial looks at $16 an hour and goes, shit, I have to move back home with my parents and I'm 37. And that's the problem with H-1B visas. But Elon Musk likes the H-1B visas, Trump likes the H-1B visas, and he's not going to stop them. He wants them to continue. And so all of these jobs that were sent overseas, Trump has done a semi-decent job of getting a lot of that back, all just to hand a large portion of those future jobs over to immigrants, not Americans. On top of that, it gets even worse because a lot of these jobs are STEM jobs or they're in tech. So these Indians that are infinitely more qualified than Americans are coming here to build AI. And AI is not going to be regulated by this administration. Trump is going to actively, actually, knowingly or unknowingly, help usher in a future AI-based surveillance state. We're going to have less privacy than ever, more surveillance than ever, CCTV everywhere. Palantir is going to be creating auto profiles on us and deeming us as possible future threats, all in the name of progress. Because progress and technological advancement sounds too good to boomers who can't understand what that actually means because they don't know what AI actually is. And all they know is, well, this will be great. Trump looks at that and goes, this will be great for my future legacy. I'll have been the one that helps usher in AI more. And it's like, no, that's actually not a great thing overall. And it's the young generations that know this. Worse yet, the AI is being developed by the H-1B visa Indian. So the Indians come in, they take our jobs from us, they develop AI, which is going to take more jobs from us. This is how fucked we are. And again, that's why I've titled this episode, Trump's biggest problem is that he's a boomer. Because it's true. It's just true. Boomers grew up in simple times. These are not simple times anymore. Everything's infinitely more complex. I have to go over to my parents' house to switch them off HDMI 1 to HDMI 2. Otherwise, they don't know where their cable TV went, right? Like, that's just how it is. They're just simpler. I'm not even calling boomers stupid, but they're simpletons. It's just the bottom line. They don't get it. I have to help my parents all the time with computer stuff. My dad literally thinks AI is creepy, and I think it's kind of creepy sometimes. But he thinks it's creepy, and he'll openly admit, like he did on the Super Bowl, it's all beyond him. Because it is. It just is. And so you have a boomer now, Trump, who's literally about to be 80 or 81. He doesn't know. I genuinely think he doesn't know. But he's literally creating more detrimental times for young people in the future by doing this. And so he's fortifying, without knowing it, all of the boomer policies that ruined our American jobs. He thinks he's undoing it, sort of, by bringing manufacturing back, but he's literally shooting himself in the foot. At the same time, we get Stellantis back. We get American Steel back, Hyundai Steel, Hyundai, Honda. All these companies are like, yeah, we'll come back. Great. Those are more jobs for Americans. That's how it's touted. Only it isn't. They're just going to bring in immigrants to fill them. So that's where we're at with that. And that's really the whole point of the stream. I'll take a look at more chats. 600,000 Chinese spies, says Dreadnought. Yeah, exactly. The Chinese students thing. That was mentioned in the same breath, pretty much, as the H-1B visa Indian holders, right? And so, and that, again, points out the fact that boomers literally... boomers will literally talk about how great capitalism is, but then their generation constantly undermined capitalism and a true free market economy every turn they got. Trump does that with the Chinese students. The bottom line is, if a college can't stay afloat without 600,000 Chinese students coming in, the college doesn't deserve to stay in business. That should be over with. That college should go out of business or be forced to economize and shrink back down to an affordable cost level. Instead, you have these soft boomers. Oh, the poor colleges, we'll bail them out. We'll send the students in to help keep them in business. Let's bail out more banks. Why not allow 1 million Chinese students in at this point, right? Only 10% of them wind up being spies. This is the logic that we're dealing with, though. And the young people are savages. We're not going to tolerate this stuff. We're in the fourth turning right now. All of this is going to change radically over the next 10 years. And the boomers are so soft that they literally look at us as crazy radicals, when really all we want is just a fair chance. We want America restored back to its glory. We want capitalism to actually be capitalism, not crony capitalism, borderline socialism. Okay? But that's just where we're at. I'll take a look at some chats. We don't have enough kids in STEM. Yeah, and again, you know why? We don't have enough kids in STEM. We don't have enough tradesmen. We need tradesmen. We need kids in STEM. But it's because we allow these colleges to not go out of... We've literally allowed these colleges to get away with doing shit like gender studies as a degree. Or doctorates in music, like I've studied, or like I've covered. Or, a doctorate in, a major in Black history or Black culture. Like, these are useless degrees, but these colleges expand at such a rate because they know that they're not going to go out of business. We make sure to keep them afloat, and we shouldn't. We shouldn't. College should be a narrow path. Instead, it's been widened into this woke nonsense. It's despicable. The federal government must be dissolved ASAP. Yeah, we need less government. We just need less. There's so much. There's so much that we're gonna have to fix because of boomers. Just the bottom line. Hold everything. I see. There's a super chat that came in. 2009 lifeguard. Appreciate you once again, dude. You're on a streak, man. Only donate if you can afford it. But I appreciate it, man. Even 99 cents goes a long way. I really appreciate that. If every one of my subscribers gave me $1, like just $1 a month, I'd be killing it, kind of, in addition to my job. So, appreciate you, 2009 lifeguard, as always. Yet they keep raising the tuition, says Glenn. Yep, they do that too. They raise the tuition because once again, how are the loans carried out in this country? That's why they raise the tuition. All just so you can get a useless degree and then pay back your loan for 30 years. Or even worse, Glenn, even worse, a woman, because women love these fields. The woman gets the gender studies degree. She went to college for 6 years, all on a loan. And then she wants to marry you with that kind of fucking debt. That's what Gen Z and millennials are dealing with. We're dealing with women. Well, my student loan debt's only at about 80 grand. I was just hoping once we get married that you could help me pay that off. Fuck you. That's where we're at. Everything sucks. The women suck. The colleges suck. The jobs are absent. Everything sucks. So what am I supposed to do with my gender fluid black music degree, says Shadow Warfare? That degree is your golden toilet paper, Shadow. We are getting more kids in the trades. Men aren't going into traditional colleges. That's good. That is a trend that's starting to emerge, 12 dance cycle. And I preach that here too. Trades will be infinitely more valuable from an educational standpoint than colleges will. We need electricians, We need electricians. We need plumbers. We need that kind of stuff. You run your mouth, won't lady in a job immigrants doing? Dude, you sound like you need to be deported if you're going to speak English that bad. We need to stop all funds going to state government from federal government. Remember, I'm 56 and a business owner, says 2009. Good for you, man. See, business ownership, that's the way to go. That really is. I'm doing the same thing. It's gonna be about 15 years before I'm like mega rich from it. But hey, I'll be in my 40s. I'll be like mid 40s. So I'll be in a good spot. But the thing is, I'm not on this channel to preach about stuff because I'm going to dig my way out. I'm pretty confident in that. I have business partners. It's a sound business model. It's a proven business model, right? So I'm not worried about myself. I am actively doing this because I'm worried about Gen Z and fellow millennials that are in a rough spot. And it doesn't have to be this way. But the problem is we have all these politicians in our office. They're out of touch. They're too old. We need an age limit on politicians. We shouldn't have, I voted for Trump, but we shouldn't have an 80-year-old president. We just shouldn't. That's too old. We saw it with Biden. We're seeing it with Trump. Bottom line, for different reasons, perhaps, like Biden genuinely had probably dementia, but that's the bottom line. We shouldn't have politicians in office that are older than 65. But at that point, you're falling out of touch with the times. And there's exceptions, but the general rule needs to be applied here. Term limits for sure. I agree with that too, Stephen Wells. Yep, term limits. Term limits for congressmen, etc. Term limits for mayors, You can't just keep running. Then what are you complaining about, says Stephen Wells. I'm complaining on behalf. I care about the future of America, man. I care about the generation as a whole. I see the struggle. And every time I have an interaction with a Gen Z man, I'm like, man, I love this generation. And it's unfair. It's just not to sound crybaby. It sounds like that's crybaby shit to say that, but it's true. It is true. The system has been set up against young people. And what I'm doing is I'm in an exceptional set of circumstances where I have literally, 4 business partners plus me, 5 total, to do what I'm doing. And I'm not going to go into details. This is the internet. I'm not here to share my whole private life. But not everyone's going to find themselves in those circumstances. Most people won't. Most men are going to grow up and they're largely going to be on their own, and they're going to struggle if things don't change now, When you are filthy rich, I want the Chatcago streams back. I will go back to that. Once I can really make good money here on YouTube. I'm making money on YouTube now, of course, but once I make good money, I'll have more time to do a lot more when I won't have to work my somewhat normal independent contractor job. Hell yeah, you are on your way with this show, I'm telling you, says 2000. I appreciate that, Lifeguard. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm going to keep going with it, too. I'm going to keep going with it. You're wrong about the age thing, my man. No, I'm not. I'm literally not. We now have two separate administrations that prove that, in the form of this Trump administration, which is nothing like the first Trump administration. Well, it's halfway like the first Trump administration, but in large part for all the wrong reasons. Trump is just old. He's just old. He's a cuck. He's soft. He's out of touch. Bottom line. Biden was infinitely worse. That's for sure. And Biden had dementia, but these old timers, they don't get it. They just don't know. And they're ushering in all of this bullshit AI shit. They don't understand how bad this is going to be for the future. They just view it as technological advancement. They can't comprehend it. So yeah, 65 and under, that should be our future presidents. Anything older than that, too old. We need an age limit. We need term limits. Dready Naught says, too many people. We are heading back towards serfdom. Yes. See, this is again what they don't understand. This is why I own the business that I own. I know we need to get ahead of this. Let me explain something to people here that don't get what you're saying, Dreddy Not. When you have I've already experienced this in my personal life. I've called places that I've needed to call for business, and I've been greeted by an AI operator. And I know this because it announces itself as an AI operator. In fact, it gives itself a different name every time I call, but it's in a woman's voice. It's a soothing voice sound, and it's pretty fluid now. It's not like AI 3 years ago where it was choppy and it got shit wrong. I've called before. This used to be a person that I talked to. It's now an AI. I prefer the AI. It used to be an Indian person who I could barely understand. Now it's an AI that speaks clear English. So I actually like it, but it's not good. I recognize two things can be true at once. I like and prefer the AI operator, but I hate it because this should be an American job, which it wasn't anyway. It was an Indian job. The Indians take all of our jobs nowadays. They're so much smarter than us. So at least it's not an Indian, but the fact of the matter is everything you see that's AI based could be an American job. And what's going to happen is AI is going to advance at such a rate, it's going to continue replacing jobs, especially white collar jobs, which is why I advocate for the trades. You won't see an AI plumber, okay? Any AI robot body in 50 years won't be able to wade through, very likely, 3 feet deep water without short circuiting. But a man in some boots who knows his shit will keep doing that. Electricians will be useful to help power the AI, unfortunately. So not all jobs will be replaced, but not everyone's going to go into trades. And a lot of these white-collar jobs are going to disappear. And when the jobs start shrinking from the AI development that continues to replace them, the AI that's being developed by Indians rather than Americans, when that all shrinks, we're going to have to get to a point where universal basic income is introduced. We don't want that. Canada is already 5 to 10 years ahead of us on that. They're openly having universal basic income talks. If you ever want to see where America's heading, just look to Canada and realize we're only ever 5 to 15 years behind them on the socialism bullshit that they push, right? Universal basic income will be necessary at that point when AI is eating up 75% of the workforce. Americans, Gen Z's already complaining they can't find jobs. Boomers literally insist, well, they're just not trying hard enough. They don't want to work is what it is. These kids just want to make money on TikToks. It's like, no, they can't find jobs. You don't even understand what it's like to apply anymore. Boomers used to go in, shake a manager's hand, say, I'll work any hours you need, any days you need. The manager goes, I like you, kid. You're hired. Can you start right now? The boomers used to go, yippee, yeah. It's not like that at all even. Now, as a Gen Z or as a millennial trying to apply to some of these jobs, even a Walmart job, you apply online. You go in to talk to a manager and you say, I want to apply. They say, great, apply online. That's it. There's no interview conducted on the spot. It's, oh, why'd you come all the way here? You should have went online. Go apply online. Well, guess what? Your application is filtered through AI. The AI filters through your application, and it filters for flawless applications. So if you make one mistake on your application, if you answer one question somewhat wrong, 10% wrong, you answer something just 10% off from what the Walmart has set their AI to filter for, you're immediately disqualified. Worse yet, there's no notification to let you know you're disqualified, so you're sitting around waiting for an email to notify you whether or not you're approved or not. It doesn't come. So then you apply somewhere else. Same thing happens. It is now at a point where Gen Zers have to apply to hundreds of places just to get an interview that might not even land them a job. On top of that, these jobs are being replaced by AI in the future. So no, Gen Zers are not lazy. Gen Zers want work. They can barely find it. And it's so unpersonal nowadays. There's just robots, AI everywhere filtering all this shit. It's not like how it used to be. This is what I mean when I say boomers are simpletons. It's not to insult them. We wish we could have grown up in boomer times. We didn't. We're working with what we got now. And so they don't understand that, though. They think you shake a manager's hand and you're hired. It doesn't work that way anymore. I got to experience that when I was in my teens. I literally did that at some local restaurants. By the time I got back home, I had 3 answering machine calls on my parents' phone. I was 16. I went and shook 3 restaurant owners' hands, and I got home, and all 3 of them wanted to hire me. Those were great times. It's not like that anymore. And worse yet, the AI is replacing these jobs that we're applying for anyway. And when that happens, universal basic income has to come. Because Americans will literally, they're going to be out of the workforce and they're going to need to survive. And when universal basic income comes, That is it. That is serfdom, like Dreadnought says. That is when social classes return, which is what we never want to happen here in America. But all of a sudden, you're going to have a bunch of Americans receiving $3,000 a month from the government. And when all of a sudden you have the vast majority of Americans receiving $3,000 a month, $3,000 is not $3,000 anymore. It'll be really fun for the first couple of months. People will love it. Oh, I don't have to work. I just get a $3,000 check in the mail. Well, whoop-de-doo. It covers my rent and my food and my utilities, and I can even have a little bit left over to buy stuff. Not for long. That dollar value is going to rapidly decrease. The poor will get poorer, the rich will get richer, and the middle class will be dead. And that's the concern with AI, and that's the problem with the boomer generation. They don't get it. They don't even understand this. They just think it's great. They think, oh, this is technological advancement. And it is, but it's not all great. And the concept of creating AI to assist mankind, but ultimately allowing that AI that's created to assist us to replace us makes no sense whatsoever. This is scary, says Glenn. Is it inevitable then? It's not inevitable, but we need regulations domestically on AI. We cannot regulate AI from a military standpoint, even though we should probably do that too. But that would unfortunately take the collective recognition of all the countries combined to say, hey, this AI is a problem. We need to regulate this from a military standpoint too. That would be nice. But you have countries like China, which would promise that and then not do it. And we know that. So we can't really regulate AI from a military standpoint, which is already scary enough. If you've ever watched the footage of an AI drone hunting down a human soldier and then killing him, it's frightening, and it's already happening. But we have to keep developing our military AI to keep our military superpower intact when it comes to keeping up with China. China's already, some say they're about 10% ahead of us on that, so we have to catch up and stay ahead, unfortunately. But from a domestic standpoint, we should be regulating the shit out of it for the sake of Americans. And that's not happening either. So that's the way to stop it, but it's not happening. Only the young generations understand this, unfortunately. Wait, you don't want social classes to return? Did you unironically advocate for communism? No, yeah, I misspoke. What I mean is, you want the social class, you want those to stay. You don't want serfdom. You don't want the middle class to disappear. I completely misspoke, Scruffy. Good catch. Traveling lamp. I was making almost $6,000 once before I got laid off. Yeah. And why'd you get laid off, Traveling Lamp? What happens? Tell me. Was it AI? Was it Indians? Was it both? 3,000 is too much, says Dial Up 5583. It's the amount that I foresee Americans needing to stay alive based off of rent rates, which most Americans will be renting, food costs, gas, utility costs, etc. But yeah, I mean, you're probably right in that regard too. The government will acknowledge how much it costs to live and then pay you $500 less. So you might not even sadly be wrong about that. But the whole point is we don't want to get to that point where everyone's receiving a check from government in universal basic income form. Good talk. I sub, says Donnie Buds. Thank you, man. I appreciate that. Yeah, be sure to like this stream, by the way. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, if you're enjoying the content. Oh, see, that one got hid dial up, but it says Australians are bent over in almost every way. Yeah, this is happening around the world. This is not a uniquely American problem. Canada, sorry we ruined the economy and you're homeless. You can do assist sewer slide. Canada, yep, Canada, depressing, yeah. John Stevens says, I am self-employed and the damn boss is more worried about paying bills than giving me a raise. Yep. Yeah, real wage growth only grew about 1% year over year, which is not a bad thing, and it's actually not even terrible growth, but the problem is our cost of living went up 2.4%. So again, Americans aren't finding themselves in a position where they feel rich. This is not a golden age, despite what Trump would have you believe. And because Trump bases it off the stock market. The stock market's doing wonderful. But, again, the percentage of Americans invested in that in any meaningful way is too low for the stock market to represent the economy. And so real wage only growing 1%, while cost of living went up 2.4%, means that Americans are basically just making slightly, just enough amount more to feel like they're not drowning yet. But it's close. Every time I go to the grocery store, it's close. It's like the water's up to here. I can breathe out of my nose and soon it'll be over my head, Doesn't UBI increase taxes? Well, that's the thing. That's the whole problem with UBI. But it'll be introduced as the solution regardless, Tom. And that is the problem, though. The government doesn't make money. You have to understand that. Anytime the government's using money, it's your money. So, yes, that is the issue. UBI will only work for so long. IDK, man, the robot AI drywallers are terrifying, says Dialogue. Yeah, well, this is what I mean. That kind of contractor labor won't be replaced nearly as quickly. Maybe even not ever. I mean, we'll get to a point where there's humanoid robots, which is freaky to think about, but true. But even then, there's just a lot of jobs where it's like either they're going to last the longest, or they might still stay relevant even during AI. But you're going to have the reverse problem. College has created too many doctors and too many lawyers right now. When AI grows even further, you can only have so many plumbers and electricians and keep those as good jobs and profitable jobs. Before then, that is an overflooded market. So it's still a problem, you know. But for now, if you're young and you're watching this and you're thinking, should I go to college or trade school? You should go to trade school. Absolutely. Let me scroll down to the newest chats. You fix the robots. That's smart. I don't blame you for that. That's a job that's needed too. That's smart. Even though I only agree with half of what you speak of, I liked and subscribed, says Stephen Wells 77. Yeah, I saw that. There's a little back and forth with you, but you're welcome here. Open discourse is fine, so long as it's done in a intelligent way. And I don't have a problem with you. I don't even have a problem with the haters. I allow the haters in my chat for all I care. Like, I don't know anybody personally. Well, actually I do right now, but for the most part, all of you people I don't know personally, so I don't like when somebody's like, "Hey man, are you bald?" I'm like, "No," but I'm not even going to answer that because I just don't care. So most people are welcome here. I just don't welcome spammers. Scruffy says, I would love if you became communist. Mao knew how to change his system to be more independent from the Soviets. I believe we should follow a path similar. I wholeheartedly disagree with that, Scruffy. So we can separate from China. I completely disagree with that one. I think that's the path. I think that's the path that we could be heading down, and that's what makes me the most nervous, in all honesty. Communism would work if men were angels, right? That's my view. That's my thought process on that. Liked and sub, says Glenn. You already did that, I thought. If you only subscribe now, Glenn, after I've seen you in my chat for 3 days now, I'm disappointed, actually. Donald Trump cut the infrastructure funding to utility companies. I was doing inspection inventory and geolocating. Yeah, see, these are stories that need to be told more so people can understand this. Because I voted for Trump, but I am not MAGA, and I'm not a Trump glazer. I'm here to give people the real deal. That's what this channel's all about. I'll always be socially and fiscally conservative. But that doesn't mean I'll blindly support a president who's making a lot of mistakes. If he's making mistakes, I'm going to call it out, you know? I don't know why we are so obsessed with being the strongest warlords, because power is the most important. We need to hold on to that. That's why. We don't ever want to find ourselves in a position where we're at someone's mercy. That's how to live life at all. You know, what happens when you lose power? I don't know. Ask any empire that's now non-existent, you know? Like the Roman Empire, gone. The British Empire, gone. Britain's in a sad state nowadays, right? Italy's in a sad state nowadays. Greece in a sad state nowadays. Power's important. There's a real world out there, and there's a fantasy land where everybody loves each other. And there's a fantasy land where Xi Jinping and Trump hug each other and they mean it. And they agree, you know what, you were mean to me and I was mean to you. Let's be friends now. Hooray! And a rainbow comes over both of them and they hug for a photo. That world doesn't exist. We should start regulation with dating apps. Dating apps are a disgrace nowadays. I was there when Tinder. I was there for Tinder in 2015, okay? I know what it used to be like, and what it is now is terrible. It's rigged against men like pretty much everything else. Get off dating apps. They're not worth it. Dating apps literally set it up so that men feel like they have to pay for that subscription bullshit. The second they started doing that was the second I deleted all that shit. You can just go up to a woman and say hi, you know? There's only a 50% chance she accuse you of raping her if you do. So You will have nothing and be happy to breathe garbage, says Tom. It's getting to that point if we're not careful. Trump Winnie the Pooh in real life. I defend the Trump voters. All we did was throw a Hail Mary against the bro. Absolutely, dial up. Absolutely, man. That is what voting for Trump was about. It was about throwing the Hail Mary. And it's only about 25% worked, you know. It's been 75% a disaster so far. Stephen Wells says Ukraine. Yeah, well, I don't know what you're talking about Ukraine, but that's another thing with the foreign policy. Trump the boomer. He's gone down the foreign policy rabbit hole, you know. He's down that foreign policy rabbit hole now. We gotta save Ukraine. We gotta attack Iran. We gotta send troops to the Middle East. It's like, oh, I can't facepalm hard enough. God forbid we get into a war in the Middle East, and that's another very likely $6 trillion down the drain. Our Venn diagrams overlap far more than we think. Words are only triangulation of thought, says Dial Up. I somewhat agree with that, but the liberal ideology is wicked, so I don't ever side with liberals because they want stuff that I'll never stand for. You know, transgenderism, abortion, social problems, social issues that I'll never support, ever. Do you think the Epstein files will be a flashpoint this election cycle? Probably. It didn't have to be this way either. And again, you know, when I've noticed the demographics that are interested in the Epstein files, it's not the boomers. It's the young people. And so even that is a reflection of Trump being a boomer. Trump has done everything possible to conceal the most amount of this Epstein shit as possible. He's done everything possible to not release this shit, only ever signing the Epstein Files Transparency Act after an act of Congress forced him to. Boomers are the ones that are like, oh, I don't care about the Epstein files, blah, blah, blah. The Republican boomers are always worried. They're like, well, what does this have to do with Trump? It's like, it's not about Trump. The Epstein files aren't about Trump. The Epstein files are about the victims. The Epstein files are about the fact that this world is run by sickos and pedophiles. And even worse, it's run very likely by people who are tied up in intelligence agencies like Mossad, CIA, and MI6 who compromise other wealthy, powerful people using pedophilia or using scandalous situations to blackmail them and control them. That's what it's about. It's not about Trump. It's never been about Trump. I've predicted the whole time on this channel that Trump would not be criminally implicated in the Epstein files. And the more info we get on it, the more we realize that that's true. You know, the latest release just showed that Trump, I guess, reported Epstein. So that it's not about Trump. People can't see the forest through the trees on that. But here you have Trump, a boomer, who literally, oh, you still talking about that creep, Jeffrey Epstein? It's a hoax. And boomers on my YouTube, what are you talking about Epstein for? Nobody cares about Epstein. Yeah, the fuck we do. Young people care about Epstein. But that's because we view the world way differently. And so will it be a flashpoint this election cycle? Probably yes, because Trump is dragging this on. More and more, he drags it on. He has the worst narrative and worst takes on Epstein. Every time he's asked about it, he gets mad, he deflects, or he addresses it in a dismissive fashion. This is terrible for this administration. By far the biggest political blunder I've perhaps seen out of any administration in my lifetime. And the worst mistake Trump has made politically in his entire political career. So yeah, it probably will be. And why wouldn't the Democrats weaponize that? It looks terrible. Trump is literally on record saying, if you support the release of these files and talking about this, I don't want your vote. I don't need your vote. You're not MAGA. It's like, all right, fine. I'll stay home during the midterms then. Fucking lose then, bitch, for all I care. Get rid of all the agencies that contain the letters of the alphabet, says Stephen Wells. Yep. Pam Bondi and Kash Patel. Pam Bondi very likely needs to be criminally prosecuted, and Kash Patel is completely incompetent. I think world leaders are they're absolutely on the list. That's the whole point of the Epstein files. The world leaders are compromised, a lot of them, and that's what Trump is actively protecting. Trump's not concealing them to protect himself. He's concealing the files to protect our allies, like what we're seeing go down in Britain now, as Peter Mandelson's been exposed. All British politics are being turned on their head over the Epstein files release. Governments are changing. The Polish president or prime minister, Donald Tusk, can't make that name. Donald Tusk, he's weighed in. We've been actively protecting Israel by trying to conceal the Epstein files because of the deep Israeli ties. Epstein owned an IDF sweater, the Israeli Defense Force sweater. Ehud Barak, former Israeli prime minister and former, it's not Secretary of Defense, but their equivalent. Ehud Barak held multiple high positions for the Israeli government. He visited Epstein frequently. Epstein oversaw the Wexner Foundation, which made a $2.3 billion donation to Ehud Barak. Epstein was very likely Mossad. Bibi Netanyahu doesn't even deny any of this anymore. And so we've been protecting Israel, Britain. We've been protecting all these world leaders. Prince Andrew implicated. So that's what Trump's been doing. He's been protecting global elites, not himself. I made this prediction, and I'm vindicated and validated from all those months ago. Last May, I made the prediction that Trump wouldn't be criminally exposed or implicated. That's turning out to be true. It was never about Trump protecting himself like the Democrats wanted it to be. It's about Trump protecting all of these powerful elites, many of whom have donated to the Republican Party and Democrat Party, many of whom, some of whom, for instance, have their offspring working in the Trump administration now, like Leon Black. So that's what it's been about the whole time. And it's a boomer take. The boomers are, I don't care about Epstein. You should. But you won't because you're a simpleton. The young people care about this shit because they're forced to view the world in reality. Boomers viewed the world from their soft lens of growing up in the best housing market, best economic times. So they view the world as how it ought to be. We ought to open up our borders and allow third world immigrants into this country because we owe them a shot at a better life. That's boomer ideology. Young people are sick of immigrants. I hate illegal aliens. I want them all out of this country. If it's a 93-year-old grandma and she crossed our border illegally 40 years ago, but she's committed no crimes and worked a nice job and had a family here, I want her deported. I do not care. If it's a 9-year-old school child who was born here from illegal immigrant parents and all they're doing is going to school every day and then going home, I want them deported with their parents. I do not care. These are people taking up space and hurting Americans. Get them out. We do not owe them a better life. They owe us a better set of circumstances in America, meaning they should be coming here to contribute. Most of them cannot. Many illegal immigrants come here. Many legal immigrants come here and go right on welfare. That's my money, once again, going to fund people replacing me. So no, keep the borders shut. Shut down immigration for 20 years. We don't owe the world a better life. But again, that's just the difference. It's a generational gap. I deal in reality. Boomers deal in how it ought to be. That's the difference. Dragonsmith316 says, preach. Hell yeah, man. Welfare is only the half of it, says Stephen Wells. Yeah, it is. They take up space. They increase our cost of living because they buy more of our food. They take our jobs. Trump wants the farmers to continue to have access to the illegal immigrant workers. He literally said it. He said, I was the one who told ICE and DHS, you got to go easy on our farmers, our beautiful farmers. We love our farmers. And, you got to go easy on them because they're illegal immigrant workers they're picking the fruit and they're the backbone of our society, blah, blah, blah. He didn't say all of that, but that's in summary what he said. He defends this shit. That should be Americans that are employed by our farmers. And then people go, do you know what that would do to the cost of fruits and vegetables? Yeah, because you know who allowed that to happen? Boomers allowed this to happen for fucking years. We allowed the southern border to be non-existent. Boomers allowed it. All these illegal immigrants to cross the border. The farmers hire them for $2.50 an hour when it should be an American doing that job for at least minimum wage. So yes, that would make the cost go up. But whose problem is that? And whose fault is that? On top of that, we already subsidize so many of these farmers every year. Their crops go bad, a fire breaks out, they didn't sell enough. The government steps in as it is and says, here's fucking free money for the entire year, farmer. So if we subsidize them as it is, they don't even hire Americans? How does that make sense? If the government subsidizes farmers as it is in large part every single year, should they not at least be hiring Americans who then get paid by the farmers who are subsidized by the government with our money? The illegals that come in here, or any immigrant for that matter, always find themselves in the position where they're taking our money away from us at our expense, and then in the long run are actively replacing us. Bucky Ann's Creation 9089 says, my husband lost his job to illegal Venezuelans. He passed last July. Sad to hear that. But it was horrible during the last administration. Yeah, the Biden. Yep, absolutely. You'll hear plenty of these stories, by the way. Mark Mitchell, the head of Rasmussen Report, does what he does now because he lost his job. I believe he said it was for Walmart. He wasn't a regular ass Walmart worker though. He was a high tier fancy Walmart tech worker, I believe it was. And guess what? Walmart saw the opportunity with H-1B visas and Indian workers. Walmart saw the opportunity to replace Mark Mitchell, a white man American who was working that job, all of a sudden replaced. Not only that, but the ultimate slap in the face is they bring these people in and they go to you, American, who's holding that job, and they say, hey, train this guy. He's from overseas. He doesn't understand yet. So you go, okay, no problem. You train him, and then a couple months later, Walmart goes, hey, by the way, we have to lay you off. Who do they replace you with? The Indian foreigner that you trained. And this is the reality for so many Americans. We should all open daycare centers in Minnesota, says Dragon. Exactly. But you know what would happen if we did? This Department of Justice, or any Department of Justice in the future, would make an example out of us. Because if it's one thing the conservatives do great, it's eat each other. They would say, you know what? We're going after the Democrats. Barely. We're going after them. But we can't tolerate this from our own side. So who would be the ones getting the 20-year prison sentences for that? It would be the white Americans who were born here that opened up fraudulent daycare centers. We'd be getting 20 to 40-year sentences. We'd be having our assets stripped so that we could be paying back the government for the fraud. Meanwhile, the Somalians, they're not having their citizenship revoked. They're not having their assets stripped away from them. They're not going to ever have to pay that back. In fact, Trump is pulling out of Minnesota. What's his name? Tom Homan just announced all of ICE is pulling out. And then the MAGA cheerleader channels are addressing that as, well, we won already. We deported all of them. We won, on to the next. That's not what happened. It's not what happened at all. Trump surrendered. You think every illegal immigrant's been pulled out of Minneapolis, that large of a city, Minnesota, that large of a state? No. Nope. That's not what happened. So, but go ahead. They can continue. Then in Dearborn, Michigan, we have the Muslims creating an active fucking colony. You know, Afghans, it's like, what is it? 63% of Afghan immigrants come in here. They live off our welfare. It's got to stop. And it's all boomer soft ideology crap that is the reason for this. The Immigration Act of 1965 is what changed our immigration policy. It still hasn't been undone. That's exactly what happened. My husband, Bucky Ann's Creation. She just said her husband passed last July, lost his job to an immigrant, and this is what happened. My husband trained the guy who then took his job and then the illegal for $8 an hour as opposed to his $22 per hour that my husband got. Exactly. It's modern day slave labor. That illegal might, or immigrant, whether they're legal or not, that immigrant might be getting paid $8 an hour as opposed to completely free slave labor, but it is modern day slave labor, is really what it is. And this is crony capitalism that we're witnessing. And Trump is complicit in it. He's okay with H-1B visas. He's okay with the L1 parking loophole that I've covered in one of my other videos. He's all okay with this. And why? Because he's a boomer, and he's out of touch, and he's soft. He's a cuck. I'm looking forward to the day where there's more James Fishbacks running for office, and that day's coming. And I'm looking forward to that. We need young men running for positions. We need strong young men running for positions of government, which is why I advocate more and more. If you feel politically pulled You should actively get involved in your local politics, and not everyone should hold political office. Most Americans won't ever hold political power and shouldn't. But you should get involved then in helping a good candidate that you can spot out in your local town and support him. Go door to door and spread the word. Get on apps where you can text people locally about this candidate. Everyone needs to step up at this point, because otherwise we're going to lose our country. Modern day serfdom, says Dreadnought. Yep, exactly, man. We're heading there. We're almost there. We're experiencing side effects of that now. We're not quite there yet, but it's getting close. Blame the CEOs, not the workers. Well, yeah, I mean, it's not. Listen, the immigrants are just doing what comes natural to them. They're capitalizing. So I'm not mad at the immigrant. I'm not mad at the Indian, the guy from India. I'm not mad at. I don't hate him. I hate that he's being allowed to come in here. That Indian should be back home at India. It's his well-being is not my problem. I don't hate him, though. He can do whatever he wants in his own country. He shouldn't be coming here to replace an American. And so, yes, I hate the CEOs. I hate the corporations. I hate the crony. I love capitalism and free market. I hate crony capitalism. And I hate the boomer politicians that allow all of this to continue. Jeff Jones is saying something. He says he was killed by ICE. Who? Deport yourself. Why would I do that? I'm a Native American. I'm literally a Native American because I have 4 generations now in this country. So that makes me a Native American. I'm not going anywhere. This is literally my fucking country. I'm an American. Native American. Do you think more people will try to do what Luigi did? Maybe, but I hope not. That's not the right way to address this. I'm voting Massey next time, even if he doesn't run. Yeah, I'll tell you this. I've done a complete flip on my opinions of Thomas Massey on this channel. If you go back to some of my old videos, when Trump was on a roll still, I actually still liked a lot of what Trump was doing. I'm so ashamed. This is one of the things I like to tout how right I was about my predictions back last year. This is one of the ones I'll openly admit I was way off the mark on. I hated Thomas Massey back then. I was like, he's a fucking rhino traitor. He just votes against everything in this administration. He's a contrarian. That's all he exists to be. Now I understand. I've really, my eyes have been opened a lot. I actually still am somewhat annoyed by Thomas Massey, but overall, I'm about 80% more on his side than I was last year. I understand now. I really do. Notice how after Luigi capped that CEO, we didn't hear of any other CEOs in HC or tech being targeted like that. That's odd, isn't it? We need people in politics who have been in at least one physical fight in their life, says Stephen Wells. There is something to be said if you're a man. It's important, I think, as a man, to have grown up being on both the winning end of a physical fight and the losing end of a physical fight. That's the best kind of man you could ask for. Someone that understands what it means to get your ass kicked. Someone that also understands what it means to kick ass. Because then you're well-rounded at that point. So I almost agree with that. I think the best men have experienced that, Like, I've experienced that. I kicked a lot of ass as a little kid, believe it or not. My first fight was in kindergarten. I beat up a bully. I literally punched him in his face. But I also, in 5th grade, went after a kid, and I don't know if I had a winning record, but him and I scrapped a lot, and he definitely kicked my ass sometimes. Sometimes I had a bloody nose. Other times he had a bloody nose. We went to war. Weirdly enough, we had this is how men are. It's weird. But this was like in 5th grade, and like him and I would get along for the most part. We would talk about Star Wars and stuff, and we'd play all the time. And he invited me over to his birthday party, and we had already been in like 8 fights by then. But that's just how boys are. But yeah, he would kick my ass sometimes. He took karate back then, and I didn't, though, So it's more embarrassing for him that I did kick his ass several times as well. But he took karate, so he would pull out these crazy moves on me. So, but yeah, I kind of agree with that to some degree. These soft guys out here, never been in a fight once. They run their mouth all the time. They say shit without understanding what that could mean. I tend to agree with that. That's a little weird side tangent rant there, but your comment brought that out of me. So, well, it's like leaving the door open. The mosquitoes are going to fly in. Come here the right way, says Hot Rod. Here's my opinion, Hot Rod 76. don't come here at all for the next 20 years. That's my stance right now. We have so much that we need to fix in this country domestically. There's so much wrong with our infrastructure, our manufacturing, our local businesses, everything, our economy. We need to shut down immigration for the next 20 years. We really do. And then, while that's shut down, we need to strike down the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1965. We need to strike that down so that when we reopen immigration, we actively discriminate against third world countries. There's no reason to be bringing in third world citizens. They're going to only know how to ruin our cities. They're not going to improve them. So that's my stance on immigration. I think you're hateful in general, says meh meh. Are you hating on me for being hateful? Because that makes you hateful too. That doesn't make you a Native American. Yes, it does. What's the definition of being a native? Jeff Jones is a crybaby Muppet. I don't know who Jeff Jones is. Trump said we don't have enough talent in America. Yep, I know. Can you believe that? I cannot believe that. It shocked me to my core when he said it, and it's probably something he said that I'll never be able to fully let go. That's what I'm looking for, says 2009 Lifeguard. Candidates that are young like you, informed in both. Yeah, well, after creating a channel like this, 2009 Lifeguard, I think my hopes of ever being a senator are going to be dashed, especially if my channel does continue to grow and blow up over time. There's going to be active resistance against a guy like me holding a position in Congress or Senate. Congress is funded by super PACs and big pharma, right? And I'm against super PACs and big pharma, and I've made that clear. I don't like Qatar PAC, APAC, big pharma. I don't like any of that. I want grassroots politicians in Congress. That's already enough of a stance where I'm going to be prohibited. The system will work against me unless we can destroy the system, which I hope we do. But then also for Senate, because the idea is you can only really run Senate-worthy candidates, and the Senate would frown upon somebody like me, okay? But hey, if things change, you never know. My plan, truthfully, is to allow my business to grow enough to where I build enough wealth so that I can influence society in the right direction with my wealth. And I'm well on the way to doing that, but it's going to be about 10 more years or so before I really have that kind of power. But we need a lot to change in this country. Me too. My immigrant relatives came in the 1800s, says Bucky Ann's Creation. Exactly. That makes you a Native American. This moron claims himself a native with 4 generations. Yep, I do. I'm a Native American. What's the definition of being a native? What's the Google definition of native? No, when was the last time I'm not claiming to be indigenous. I'm just claiming to be native. If your family goes back generations here and you were born and raised here, you're a native to America. Exactly. Not Jeff the Red. Exactly. They don't understand it. They hate that, but it's true. I'm not claiming to be indigenous, but I am a native. The mentality is a perfect example of Trump mentality. That would make me the supreme emperor of the universe. Dial up. It's a nice joke, bro. He must be grandchildren of Geronimo. Nope, I have no indigenous Indian blood in me. But I am a Native American. My late husband was part of the Cherokee. So, see, you have indigenous in you, too. And you're a native. Wow, you are the whitest Cherokee ever. That's because I'm not Cherokee. Complete immigration moratorium, says Not the Jeff. Amen. Yep. For at least 20 years. Let me scroll up to the top here. You're definitely not anti-snack pack. I'm all about family size, bitch. Salad. It's because salad, it's sad or salad. It's because what we heard after CK and the CEO were murdered, people cheered about it. That's messed up. A lot of messed up people I see. Well, you can't, here's the thing. I never advocate for violence on this channel, of course. But when it happens, are we surprised anymore? You know what I mean? Like, are we surprised? Because the fact of the matter is, what you have is the recipe for a revolution when it comes to what's going on here. If we're not getting justice, right? If the system's working against us, if our cost of living is terrible, it's only a matter of time before people rise up and do something about it if our own politicians won't. So I'm never surprised about it, right? I just think that there's still a chance for us to go the nonviolent path. We just need better candidates to be running. That's the solution. We're not getting that right now. And if it doesn't happen soon, then we very likely could experience a violent revolution in this country. But that would be terrible. Because right now, geopolitically, that could expose us to the rest of these other superpowers, and we need to stay ahead of them, and we need to remain the world's hyperpower. A violent revolution in America, an American Revolution 2 or 3.0, would be not great, I think, geopolitically speaking. But it could happen. Yeah. I mean, it's happening in other countries right now. So. Calling yourself a Native American feels like you're trying to rage bait. I'm just using the term native properly. Reminds me of Clavicular taking meth, which he was right, but it wasn't the meth we know. Well, it's not. I'm just using native in the true definition, in its true definition of term. I'm not claiming to be indigenous, but I am a Native American, and I openly say that because I was born here legally. Wherever you're born, you're a native to. This live stream was interesting. I'll check out your channel, says Stephen Wells. Appreciate you, man. Yeah, be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications as well. I have no problem with seeing a chatter like you back. I appreciate the interesting thoughts. Even if, you, like you said, you only agree with half my stuff, I'm okay with that. I appreciate well thought out people that can actually add intelligent value to this chat. There's so many swine in this chat, you know? I hate casting my pearls to swine. I want more people like Stephen Wells in here. Or even Scruffy. Scruffy, I don't care. If you like communism, I don't care. You're a regular viewer. You're welcome here. I just completely disagree with you, and I think communism's stupid. But I understand why people gravitate to it. Dial Up, you've been a good one. Appreciate you. Glenn's in here all the time. That's great. Shadow Warfare. You know? Like I said, I was a Dem until I realized that Dems and Reps swapped viewpoints. Well, you know, it almost seems that way, doesn't it? I don't even think they did fully swap viewpoints, but you go back far enough. Really what happened, I love you, says Shadow. I love you too, man. You go back far enough and you realize, in all honesty, like I've gone back and watched presidential debates, for instance, between like the Clinton presidential debates. That's an interesting one to watch. Even Gore versus Bush. I've watched those debates, and it's like those debates are so foreign to watch now almost. It's like mind-blowing where they're like, yeah, I agree. They just like agree a lot. They're like, I agree with what he said, actually. I agree with that too. Or I would just tweak this here, but overall I agree. And then they have like very radical disagreements on like 20% of the ideas. And it's just like, that is such a foreign concept now. Like, that's just not how our politics are anymore. And I'm not one to advocate for unity with the liberals because I think their ideology I don't like their ideology at all. I don't want unity with people that, you know, implemented COVID and loved it and they wanted 6 feet apart and masks and forced vaccinations and vaccine IDs. I don't want unity with people that promote abortion or transgender stuff. That's not me. I'm very socially conservative. But it is interesting to go back 25, 30 years ago and to see these politicians just 70, 80% in agreement with each other. And there is more of a sense of comfort there, in all honesty. I'll be straight up honest with you when I watch that. There's a longing almost where it's like, man, I don't want the unity with the modern day radical leftist lunatic, but wouldn't it be nice if Democrats and Republicans were like how they were 30 years ago, where at least Democrats put on the face of wanting the best for Americans and did some policies that were good for us still? Wouldn't that be nice? But it's just not like that anymore. Yes, Dems used to be normal. They at least used to appear normal. You know, they used to give each other handshakes with the Republicans. You know, I don't know. It's just crazy now. And yeah, I think a lot of them probably were normal. I mean, you go back far enough and you hit JFK and you listen to JFK and you're like, he sounds like a Republican, but he was a Democrat. Socially conservative means incel. My brother in Christ, I am not in a cell. As you can see, I am a free man. They both suck now. Yeah, they do. For me, one side is ideologically correct, but sucks. The other side is ideologically wrong and sucks even worse. So that's where I'm at. Yeah, we have crony capitalism with privatized profits and socialized debts. Yep. Oh, beautiful way to summarize it. Absolutely. The banks got bailed out when they lose. Yep. And the free market. The free market. The scales are weighed. The scales are weighted. Yes, they are. That's a big problem. It's all going to have to change. the system is very likely going to have to at least be 3/4 burned down. So, good old Obama. Yeah, he fucked up a lot too. I didn't even cover anything about him. I covered Clinton and Reagan, both of which fucked us over in different ways. But Obama really fucked us up too with the Obamacare and all this other bullshit, the bailing out. Yep, terrible. The race wars, the social pressure of that, crazy shit. Absolutely crazy. George Carlin was right. George Carlin, anytime you watch George Carlin, you realize he was a man ahead of his times. He was a comedic Alex Jones. All right, that's going to wrap it up for me, guys. This is one of the longer streams I've ever done on this channel. It might have just broke the record for the longest stream, but I enjoy chatting with you guys. Be sure to subscribe right now to American Advocates if you haven't already. Make sure notifications are turned on when you do, so you're notified every time I go live, post, make a video, etc. I'll be going live pretty much every day like I have been. I almost didn't go live today. It's super slow in the news, but I did want to discuss this Trump boomer topic. I heard it from Owen Schroyer, a channel you should also check out when he was discussing it. The last gasp of the boomers. May it be so, and may America live to see a renaissance period in the 2030s. I pray it be so. It can be so, but we need to step up and take a more active part in our politics. And we need at least a halfway miracle. So glory to America. God bless the USA, the greatest nation on earth by far, even still now with how bad it is. I wouldn't want to live anywhere else. God bless you as well. Thank you all to everyone. Thanks to my super chatter once again. 2009 Lifeguard. Appreciate you as always. I appreciate all of what's becoming my loyal viewers here. Continue to tune. Thanks so much and have a great weekend. I'll be back tomorrow probably to discuss something in some capacity. Trump always tends to announce his foreign policy decisions on the weekends so that it can't hurt the stock market. I don't know if you've noticed that trend like I have, but I wouldn't be surprised if some Iran news comes in tomorrow or Sunday. So there's a chance I'll talk about that then. Until then, though, have a great evening and a wonderful weekend. God bless you. Love you.